There are only a handful of things that can make an M5 competition better, and one of them is a complete Alpha One system.
This is one of the best looking BMWs that we have had in the shop. This BMW M5 competition has all of the bells and whistles from the factory and a bunch of aftermarket goodies as well. And now the audio system will match how good the rest of the car is.
This is going to be a long installation video because the customer opted for a complete Alpha One speaker system, our amp, and a third-party sub. Pretty soon I won't have to say third-party sub because we are working on our own Alpha One external subwoofer. And if you want to be the first to know about when that's going to drop, make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel or sign up for a newsletter on our website. But since this video is going to be long enough, I'm not going to go into too much detail about all the equipment going in, but here's just a quick summary.
Our Alpha One speakers are designed to deliver crisp highs, clean mids, and deep lows at any level without distortion. They are directly plug and play, making use of factory hardware and mounting locations. Our amp used in the M5 is capable up to 1,680 watts max power with a custom tune crafted specifically for this car and the customer's ears based on the questions he answered. All of our amps allow for an easy connection of an external sub, which leads me to the next part. This customer opted for a trunk sub, which once you plan out the cabling that you'll need, more on that a bit later, our amp will take care of the rest.
While you can do everything in this installation yourself if you choose to do so, we suggest setting aside an entire weekend so that way you can take your time. And our DIY Essentials Kit and Trim Tool Kit will have what you need to make this so much easier. Of course, if you don't want to do this yourself, you don't have to. You can find one of our certified installers near you. We have them in about 30 countries around the world. And if you're in the Orlando, Florida area, well then stop on by and we can do it for you. Since this is such a massive installation, this is an all hands on deck situation. Jarrett and I will both be tackling this install. So buckle up and enjoy the ride. Without further ado, Jarrett and, well, me, take it away.
The first thing you should do before starting any portion of the installation is disconnect the battery, pop the trunk, and remove the floor panel. A pick tool can help get a good grip under it. With a 10mm socket, remove the negative battery terminal and set it aside. Remember not to close your trunk after this. Now let's start with the speakers. For the front door panels, start by removing the tweeter housing by pulling out and away. Disconnect the tweeter by pulling the connectors apart. For the door panel, start by removing this door handle trim with a trim tool. If you've never done this before in your car, it will be very, very tight. Start from the top and work your way down. Once free, pull up and away since there is a locating tab at the bottom. If any tabs fall out, simply slide them back into place later. Remove the two T20 screws. Insert a trim tool in the bottom of the door panel and begin pulling it away from the door. Loud popping will be normal. Once you have some leverage, your fingers will be easier. For the top, lift up and away. If this weather stripping and foam comes off, simply place it back on the door like so. Remove the three T20 screws around the speaker. To speed up the process, we opted not to remove the door panel completely. We suggest you do to avoid any awkward angles. Remove the two connectors in the speaker, making note of which one is for the tweeter, which in this case was the one with the blue and green wires. Take an Alpha One A45 mid speaker and plug the included filter cable into either of the slots like so. Take the main lead from the BMW and plug it into the other end of the filter cable. Finally, take the connector that goes to the tweeter and plug that into the remaining slot on the speaker. Reinstall the factory T20 screws. Use a cable tie to clean up the filter cable and extra slack, securing it to an existing harness.
For the tweeter, remove the lead from the foam and the foam from the housing. While pulling up with moderate force on the leads to the speaker, use a trim tool to gently push back on the clips holding the tweeter. It will pop free. Take an Alpha One tweeter and snap it into place. Place the foam back in and secure the tweeter leads. For the reinstallation, you'll have to reset the door fasteners. Simply place a forked trim tool under the base of the fastener and pull it up. That will allow it to be placed back into the door. Have your Jarrett step in and remove this large plastic fastener from the door if it stays behind. And slide it back into the panel like so. Make sure you slide the door pin back into its track and drop the door panel into the tabs on the top. Snap the panel back in place. Reinstall the two T20 screws. Slide the handle trim back in from the bottom first, then snap it back into place. Connect the tweeter like so. Then articulate and snap the housing back in place. For the rear doors, start by retracting the window shades. Reconnect the battery temporarily to roll the window down to be able to remove the corner window shade later. For the corner shade, use a trim tool in your hands to pry the back like so and articulate it out. Remove the rear handle trim the same way you did the front door. Remove the two T20 screws. With a trim tool in your hands, remove the door panel like you did up front. Lift up and away. I disconnected the handle cable to set the panel down. Like up front, if the weather stripping comes off, push it back down in place. Remove the three T20 screws holding the speaker down. Remove the speaker and disconnect it, making note of the wiring colors for the tweeter, which in this case are the darker wires. Take an Alpha One 845 mid and plug it in like you did up front. Filter cable in one slot, amp lead into the other side of the filter cable, and tweeter lead into the other slot of the speaker. Secure it with the factory screws. Use a cable tie to secure the filter and cabling to an existing harness. For a little extra room to remove the tweeter, remove these two T20 screws from the shade housing. Since the tweeter is glued in, use a pick tool to carefully remove the glue. It's soft and malleable, so it will be far easier than the hard glue BMW used to use. Once the seal of the glue is broken, apply upward tension on the leads as you carefully push back the tabs to free it. Remove and disconnect the lead by pulling. It's a tight fit. Snap the Alpha One tweeter in place. Run the cable. And plug it in. Use a cable tie to secure the slack. Reinstall the two T20 screws you removed before. Reset all of the fasteners like so to begin reinstallation of the panel. Once they are ready, reconnect the door handle cable and anything else you may have unplugged or disconnected. Feed the door pin through its track. Drop the panel into place and snap it back together. If you ended up taking the shade trim off as well, place that back too. Snap the corner shade housing in place like so. Reinstall the two T20 screws and the handle trim starting from the rear. Since we were all hands on deck, we didn't get the best shot of the subs, so we apologize, but for the floor subs you will need to temporarily reconnect your battery, so make sure it's safe to do so. Move your seat all the way forward and remove the two T50 bolts holding the rear seat rails down. We'll show you how that looks up front. Move the seat all the way back. With the BeamerTech trim tool, lift up the front of the plastic rail covers like so, and then insert the trim tool off to the side and press down and gently push away to pop the cover free. Remove the cover on each side. Remove the two T50 bolts. You'll need to carefully lean the seat back when they're out, but be careful as the seat will want to lean back on its own. Once the seat is back, remove the four T20 screws holding the grille in place. Remove the grille. Pull the carpet back to expose the sub. Remove the four silver T20 screws holding the sub down. It may be easier to pop up the side trim by pulling up to get more of the carpet free. Disconnect the connector by pressing in the center tab and lifting up. Once all of the screws are out, gently pry up on the sub to remove it. Place the Alpha One sub in place and reinstall the factory screws. Plug it in and wiggle the carpet back in place. If you do this step, make sure you remove any fasteners that stay behind and place them back into the trim for reinstallation. Reinstall the side trim if you removed it. Remember to put the fasteners in the trim first. Put the grille back in place and reinstall the 4 T20 screws. Lower the seat and replace the front 2 T50 bolts. Don't tighten them down all the way until you have the rear lined up. We didn't film the rear bolts, but make sure you slide the seat all the way forward and reinstall the bolts. Those you can tighten down all the way, then back up front, slide the seat back one more time, give them a final tighten, and snap the covers back on, and you're done. It would be smart to disconnect the battery again since you'll be installing the amp later. To get to it, start by removing this side panel with a trim tool. Remove this T20 screw. Pull on the trim to remove it. You could either unplug everything to remove it or use a soft towel to protect the center console and gently rest the trim on top of it. Now you can remove the 2 T20 screws holding the screen in place. Lift the screen up and out and remove the video cable by pressing down on the center tab and prying up with the aid of a BeamerTech trim tool since it's a tight connection. If either of these metal sleeves fall out, slide them back into place like so. With complete access to the grille now, use a trim tool and your hands to pry up and remove the grille. Remove the T20 screws holding the bracket down, but be careful near the windshield. Lift up on the bracket to remove it. It will take some force. Unplug the lead that goes to the mid and remove it. Remove the 3 T20 screws holding the speaker in place. Unplug the tweeter from it and remove it. Remove the cable for the tweeter and then the tweeter just like you did the other ones. Upward tension on the leads and push back the tabs. Snap in an Alpha One tweeter and screw down an Alpha One A40 mid. Plug the filter cable into either port of the mid and the tweeter into the other. Tidy up the cabling. Back in the car, plug the lead from the BMW into the other end of the filter cable. Place the bracket back in and reinstall the screws. Snap the grille back into place. Plug the screen back in and slide it into place. Reinstall the 2 screws. Snap the center trim back in. Reinstall the screw on the side. Replace the side panel. It's a bit tricky and a little finicky. For the rear deck, carefully use a pick tool and trim tool to remove the grille. Remove the 2 T20 screws holding the tweeter down, and the 3 T20 screws holding the mid down. Remove and unplug the mid. Pull the tweeter out. Grab an Alpha One tweeter and feed the cable through the cutout for the tweeter. Reinstall the factory screws. With the limited space, I decided to plug the filter cable into the lead from the BMW first and then into an Alpha One A40 mid, but either order works. Plug the tweeter into the other slot. Reinstall the screws. Snap the grille back in place. And you're done with all of the speakers. Let's move on to the amp with Jarrett. Start by removing the 4 fasteners holding down the rear trim like so. Once they're all out, lift up on the trim to pop it out. The amp will live on the driver's side, so use a trim tool to remove this trim here so we could remove the side panel. Remove all of the fasteners like so. You'll need to lower the rear seats for the last 2. To remove the cargo tie-down, use a trim tool to remove the cover. Then remove the T40 bolt. And the tie down. Remove this cover so it doesn't go flying later. Start articulating the panel out and remove it. Clean out the cargo tray and remove the 3 10mm nuts holding it down. Lift out the tray and remove it. With a trim tool, pop this harness free from the bracket so we can remove the bracket. Remove this connector by pressing in the center tab and rotating the arm. Remove the 2 10mm bolts securing the bracket to the car. With the aid of a trim tool, pop it free and remove it. Outside of the car, grab your Alpha One amp with its pre-installed bracket and begin plugging it in to make things easier. Each connector only goes in one slot, so it can't be done wrong. Place an included screw anchor into the hole of the body like so. Slide the amp into position as Jared is here. Use an included bolt to secure this part of the bracket to the anchor you just installed. Pull the cables out of the way and bring back in the bracket you took out before. Snap it into place and reinstall the 10mm nuts you removed before. Plug the connector back in with the arm in the position it was when you removed it, and then rotate the arm down to lock it into place. Snap the harness fasteners back in place. Unplug this connector here like you did on the other one. Plug it into the corresponding connector on the Alpha One plug-and-play harness. Take the other side of the plug-and-play harness and plug that into the location you removed the factory one from. Tidy up all of the extra slack with cable ties. The grounding spot is near the taillight, so feed the ground cable under the factory bracket and pull it through. Remove the 10mm nut on this grounding block. Slide the ring terminal on the negative cable over the stud, and tighten the nut back down. For the positive cable, remove the fuse so you could feed it through like so. Reinstall the fuse. Pop off this cover and determine where you want the lead to go. Make a small cut in the cover to allow the cable to fit. Once that's done, loosen one of the 13mm nuts, place the terminal over that stud, tighten down the nut, replace the cover, and that part is done. Now we've come to the part where we need to install the external sub. Now there's a couple things to keep in mind. One, pretty soon we're going to be coming out with our own external sub, and we're always going to suggest pairing Alpha One with Alpha One. Two, regardless of which sub that you get, the installation is going to be a bit different. Now when you purchase an amp from us, the only part that you're going to get for the external sub is going to be a remote in and out cable. Well, why is that? Every sub, regardless of doing the same thing, is going to be a bit different. For example, the connectors on the back can be different. Do you want it on the left, center, or right side of your trunk? Do you want a control knob up front? The list goes on. For these reasons, it's impossible for us to include things like the wiring, connectors, and installation hardware. While we strive to always offer complete installation kits for the products that we offer, sometimes you just will need to source things on your own, depending on the sub that you get and the location that you want it. A good rule of thumb is to note that you will need a power and ground cable with appropriate connectors or terminals, a fuse and fuse holder, and an RCA cable with possibly a Y splitter. For this installation, we're going to install the sub that this customer got, so while the principles are still the same, the installation may slightly differ for you. While here, plug in the RCA cable that you will have going to the sub and get ready to run that and the extended REM in and out cable that you will have to make on your own. Jarrett is choosing to run the cable through here, but again, this will depend on the sub that you get and where you want to put it. To get the cables into the trunk, Jarrett decided to cut a small passage into the rear trim panel. Again, this will vary depending on where you run your cables and how you want to mount your sub. Felt tape will make any passage look more factory and protect the edges from any degradation. At this point, Jarrett wanted to get to the cable run for the base control knob, which may or may not come with your sub. To keep it hidden, Jarrett opted for putting it in this storage compartment. Start by removing these two T20 screws here. For the bottom, remove the footwell trim by rotating the locking tabs and pulling it down. For some extra room, you could disconnect the light and speaker by pulling the connectors and removing the panel if you choose to.
pull the storage compartment out. Jarrett modified the knob from the kit slightly and then placed some Velcro on top to secure it to the storage compartment. Just like so. To make a spot for the cable, you will need to make a hole in the back of the compartment, so Jarrett opted to modify and sacrifice this redundant clip. Feed the cable for the knob through the hole. Plug it in and secure the knob one last time. Make sure the cable is fed through the cutout for the storage compartment. And then replace the compartment. Replace the screws. To feed the cable to the rear, pop up this trim by carefully pulling up. Remove the fasteners that remain behind with a BeamerTech trim tool and reinsert them back into the trim for reassembly later. Feed the cable under the corner trim and then down the side of the car under the carpet like so. For the rear of the car, prepare by removing this rear corner trim by pulling. And remove the fasteners that stay behind and put them back into the trim. Back up front, feed a large cable tie under the B-pillar trim. Tape the end of the control knob to the cable tie and pull it through. Once all of the slack is pulled through, make sure the front half of the B-pillar trim is secure, replace the side trim, and plug back in and reinstall the footwell panel trim.
Back at the rear, since the cable has to go to the other side, Jarrett opted to run it under the seat, so start by pulling up on the bottom of the seat cushion on both sides. To stop the seatbelt locks from falling through, which are annoying to feed back, you might want to connect the rear seatbelts like Jarrett is now. Feed the cable under the carpet like so to keep it extra neat and tidy. Tuck it under the trim like so and run it through this loom strap. Secure it to the loom you made earlier. For the final bit of the run, place in the side trim and pull the cables through the hole you made earlier. Once done, reinstall the side trim by making note of the weather stripping, all of the fasteners, reinstall the side bolster as well. Cargo tie down, and everything else. On the driver's side, reinstall the cargo tray. Reinstall the side panel, making note of the weather stripping, fasteners, back on the passenger rear side, replace this trim. Push the bottom of the seat back down. If you remove the seat side bolster, place it back. Jared had it off, but it's not necessary for this installation. And cargo tie down. Place the rear trim in place. And all 4 fasteners. Place the floor panel back in. Jared added a piece of tape under it to make it easier to lift to reconnect the battery later. Make sure your USB cable reaches into the cargo tray should you ever need to digitally access your amp in the future. At this point, Jared connected and secured the power and ground to the sub, which will go to the secondary amp this unit has. Again, this part is highly variable, so I won't go into too many details. Jared slid into sub to make sure the fitment was right. He then plugged in the bass knob, RCAs, tidied up the slack, and then did the final trimming for the main power and ground cables and remote in-out cable. He then finished by installing those 3 cables in the appropriate locations based on this unit. Finally, lift up the panel, reattach the negative terminal, and you're done. And that is how you install a complete Alpha One kit in an M5 competition. You can do this yourself with our DIY Essentials Kit and Trim Tool Kit, find one of our certified installers near you, or right here in Orlando, Florida. But as always, for more tips and tricks, product reviews, and so much more for BMWs, Minis, and Supras, make sure you subscribe and don't forget to ring that bell. Want to know what's happening first? Head on over to our website and subscribe to our newsletter. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok as well. Thanks for watching.